Hi everyone, welcome to Type Talks. Today we're here with Claire, and he is here to tell us his journey from ENFJ to INFP. And so I'm planning to go through a few client stories to give you a taste of how it's like to find one's type. Sometimes it's very straightforward, and sometimes it takes us a while to land on our best fit type. And so I find that with INFPs or for any NF type, sometimes you might wonder if you are the other NF types. So I have a lot of INFPs sometimes wondering if they could be an INFJ or an ENFJ or an ENFP because they can see the intuition, the feeling really strongly, but they're not sure what orientation their cognitive function takes. And so we're here today to discuss Claire's journey of figuring out his best fit type. And so we will pass it to Claire to give an introduction and your journey through figuring out the ins and outs of what type you actually relate to. And yeah, I'd love to know.
Okay, well, I've definitely been through all of the NF types. Um, and I'd say during like stressful periods of my life, I especially thought that I was ENFP because I was like on overdrive, I would say. But if I tried to see myself as a extrovert, intuitive, dominant, that would be like very stressful. Like I'd be trying to go to bed at night and just super restless, super like freaking out over this idea that I'm like that. But from the start, I first learned about Myers-Briggs like 10 years ago, and um, my friend thought that I was INFP. So off the bat, I had that in my mind this whole time. And I was comparing everything to me as an INFP. Everything that I learned was in relation to me being that type. Um, so for like the first 5 years, there wasn't much confusion. There was just maybe a lot of overconfidence. Um, and then it was only the past like 3 years that the confusion really started, and I think it was correlated with um, stuff going on in my life. I guess my typing journey is like directly related to my healing journey as well.
Yeah, that's really well put. So here's a fun fact. I noticed that sometimes going on a healing journey can cause us to relate to certain types. I find that to be the case with the INFJ type a lot. And so people tend to think they're introverts when they're on a healing journey because they're on the more introspective period of their life and they're shutting out the outside world to learn about themselves and to heal. And so they're like, I must be an introvert because I am spending so much time alone. And then they'll be like, I'm intuitive because I'm going to all these esoteric topics or these concepts, these philosophies to figure out the core of my healing. So people will think they're intuitive oftentimes when they're in the healing phase of their life. And they'll also think that they're feeling too. Because usually people who are on a healing journey have been hurt by someone before or are dealing with their own journey of understanding their own hurt. And so they never want to hurt another person because they understand how it's like to be on the other side. And so healing can cause people to be very compassionate and then identify with having feeling preferences. And then people will think that they're an INFJ when they're healing because they might have more of a plan and they might not want to go into situations where they don't know what to expect. because people who, let's say someone has PTSD, they might not want to go into certain unexpected situations, or they might not like surprises, or they might want to plan ahead of time because they're used to, if they don't do that, they could potentially be traumatized. And so oftentimes PTSD can make people associate with certain types, I notice. Yeah, so you mentioned how ENFP was a type that you cycled through, and also ENFJ was something that you considered strongly as well, too. So I'm curious about your journey with that.
Yeah, yeah, and you brought up points that are related to that. Um, yeah, I've definitely found that because of PTSD, it's been difficult. Um, my relationships have been difficult. I used to have a lot of friends, and I used to feel about my friends like, I guess I'm just like very sentimental, and I hold people in my heart, and so like my friends are like become like family, and then my family becomes like just like so important, and then it's like I have all these people that are my best friends, but I um but and then I guess what happened is kind of like the when I guess I realized the problem with the this way I was looking at the world. I wasn't seeing what was wrong with myself or people or the relationships, and then so it was very difficult to realize that it wasn't all working as amazing as I thought it was. And then um and I also realized that I'm way more introverted than I thought. So I kind of did the opposite. When I went on my healing journey, I realized I actually am introverted, but then I was acting like extroverted, like trying to make friends with everyone. So I would say, and that's where the ENFP ENFJ is happening. I think because like it's like my default is to be best friends with everyone. I just want I see everyone as potentially my best friend, but then I realize that it's not safe. And what I've been saying is I realize that it's not how much it's not safe. Before I was like, oh, sometimes it's not safe, and then I started realizing that it's yes. So you get what I'm saying. Um, and so there's that creative urge in me that brings out what I feel like to be ENFP. And that came along with my manic episodes, especially. Um, so I've had two pretty major manic episodes, and I guess I could describe it as like NETE going crazy. For some reason, whenever I have a manic episode, I also make a music album. But that music album, the first time it took 1 day, 2 days. The second time it took a week. And it's basically all the stuff I've recorded leading up to that point. And then I had a manic episode, and then I just like threw it all together. And so this is kind of the ENFP thing where um, I think I don't know. Maybe I don't want to get too trying to explain everything, but it's like having troubles with the creative outlets leads to like problems with my creative needs, and maybe I'm burning out because I'm thinking too much, and like there's things in my life that are like crying for help, and then it just creates like this big creative spree. Um, and then the other side of it that ends up being feeling like ENFJ. That's more chronic. That's more like a strategy that I use throughout my life that makes me like that, I think.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and so some of the reasons for why Claire leans more INFP than ENFP is the introverted feeling is dominant. And so there is this desire to want to understand and explore your identity in every single thing that you talk about. So identity exploration is almost like a necessary thing. You cannot not do it as you're talking. It's always about like trying to figure out the ins and outs of one's perspective and how things relate to oneself and one's identity too. And relating it back to concrete experiences. So there's a lot of FISI in your processing. It's interesting how you went from identifying with INFP and then really relating to being an extrovert in some way. Introverts, even if they're socially isolated, will feel the yearning for connection because every human being needs connection. And so, introverts who don't get enough of that genuine heart to heart connection, they'll actually wonder if that compulsion to want to bond or to be in connection is them actually being an extrovert. And oppositely, you'll have a lot of extroverts wondering if they're introverts because they're around people all the time and they dislike people. So let's say an ENTJ who's constantly interacting with people all the time because they never get a break from people and people don't take the advice that they give them, they start to grow a cynical outlook. And so they're like, oh, I must be an introvert because I dislike being around people. So I guess people tend to want what they don't have. And so if you swing too much to one side, you'll yearn for the other side, even if it seems like it's not like your type to want that. So,
Yeah. I actually um so yeah, the misidentifying, I think it's misidentifying myself as an ENFJ, but that is not like a conscious thing. It's more just like I don't realize who I am and my like what best fits me and my role, and like I don't have confidence in like my introverted nature. I feel like I need to please people by being what they want me to be, and then when I try to do that, I end up like what I end up doing is a strategy that's trying to be like an ENFJ, and but that's not on the that's not on the forefront of my mind until I realized it in my healing journey. I started to realize like, oh, I started to realize like, what do I think I am? Like I'm seeing like like people are saying I'm INFP, and that would make a lot of sense. But like, what do I think I am? And then I started thinking, I think I'm ENFJ, and I started realizing like that's what I actually think I am. That's how I've been actually operating, as if something like resembling that, right? And the what comes along with this, what is conscious though, is I wanted to be ISTP. So, and I think I don't want to, I guess, try to explain everything, but when I do try to explain it, it's like I think I try to explain it as the ISTP would be some kind of super ego relation to the INFP.
yeah, it's the four sides of the mind. So,
Oh, right.
your journey does represent INFPs can go into an ENFJ mode or an ISTP mode or an ESTJ mode, according to the four sides of the mind.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense to what I'm trying to say as well. Yeah. The so it's like I want to be like an ISTP. That's what's happening consciously. But then I guess like what I end up doing is trying to be an ENFJ. I get too involved with other people. I basically the strategy is it's like when you share about yourself, you open up, then other people can reciprocate. And I basically just was doing that on all the time, just as much as possible. I just wanted people to be opening up to me all the time, so I would just always be opening up. And yeah, but then at the same time, I'm an ISTP, and I just like I the my jealousy, my envy would be like that would be the subject of my envy, and like even characters um would be like I have like an ISTP vibe to them. I would get envious of that, and it's like that.
Yeah, so sometimes we identify with a type because we wanna be it rather than that's how we're like. So for context, I've done sessions with Claire, and we arrived at INFP being the best fit type. Claire has also went to places like Objective Personality and has also gotten back a type FISI, which correlates to INFP as well. I think Claire is a pretty clear-cut INFP, like a very unmistakable example of an INFP, which is why I find this so interesting. But yeah, Claire, I'm curious, what persuaded you that INFP is the right type?
It wasn't. I really attempted to figure this out. Like I wasn't just like I wasn't just asking people for help to hear what they say. Like I wanted to arrive at it myself, and so I've been learning about um like lots of things related to typology for a long time. So I didn't like really rest until I had like arrived at a conclusion. Um, and a lot of it was while I was using objective personality system. Um, I was using the method that they use to type people, the video typing method, and I took that format and then I just repeated it over and over. So I would make a video for typing, and then I would watch it. So I would watch it back, and then I would like unravel myself. I'd be like, think about like what type I thought I was. I actually thought I was introverted intuition when I started doing like, yeah, I thought it was like a INFJ or ENFJ at the start, and so I would just keep watching, and I would realize that like I'm not really what I thought that I was, because I was seeing myself. And so I just kept doing that over and over, and I kept seeing like unraveling what I was thinking, all these versions. I don't want to say it like that because it's basically what I did is I was sorting myself out. I was sorting out what I thought. It took a really long time to get to a point where I was saying things that felt like I was actually coming to a conclusion. Like it feels whenever I spoke, it always felt whenever I tried to explain things, it always felt like the conclusion was years ahead of me. So I'd be trying to explain things to people, and then it would but like to me, it was just always like I was like reaching. I just kept reaching and reaching. And then I finally, while doing this process, felt like I was actually grabbing something. I was like, oh, I actually grabbed something there, and then so yeah, I probably made like over 50 hours of video typing footage. Um, and I was trying to type myself with using the objective personality system, and at the same time I was relating back to the description of the types that Jung wrote, and um, and finally I realized that I had to be FISI in the objective personality system, and at the same time I realized I had to be feeling first. I must be either FI or EFE. And using Jung's description of the types, I realized that because, oh, actually, I just realized how I ended up there. I realized how I ended up there now. So I was working with a psychologist the past few months, and I explained these ongoing daydreams that I was having. And the psychologist said that my mind is very Freudian. So then I looked it up. What is Freud's personality type, of course? And the very prominent Jungian analyst, I don't know a lot about this, so I think her name is Mary Louise von Franz. She said someone on some forum somewhere said that she said that Freud's mind is characteristic of a inferior extroverted thinking, and basically he knows himself very well, but he doesn't know how to explain it, or he doesn't know how to. So he knows himself, but he doesn't know how to like describe the psychology for everyone else to understand. She said that inferior extroverted thinking must specify what it thinks. It has to find a way to be specific, so that it can see how what it thinks is basically affected by everything else and everyone else, what everyone else thinks. So you think something, but then you never like put it out there, and you never realize that there's this slight thing that you didn't know, that now what you thought had to be shaped more. It's not done. It's not finished being formed. Or in other ways, maybe more simple, it's kind of like you don't know how to fit what you think into what everyone else thinks. And when I read that, I was like, this is it. I'm like this. But then I wasn't sure. I thought, what if I'm actually extroverted feeling first? So I had to like. So now I was like. Now I'm reading. Sorry, I'm explaining like in depth. When I started reading Jung's description of the types about extroverted feeling, he was saying that basically extroverted feeling, when it's not balanced with introverted thinking, ends up going, and he does this with all the types, as describes what happens when it, I guess, it loops on itself. It becomes fake, like, and then if it keeps going, it gets worse. Then it almost, the way he describes it, almost sounds like it becomes like just a feeling itself. Like it's just, it almost sounded like introverted feeling, but I think I was misunderstanding. I think what he meant was something like just pure sentimentality, like just kind of like there's no purpose to it. It's just feeling, and the same problems happens with introverted feeling, but it's more like checking out from the world and just going into like a feeling of itself.
Yeah, so Carl Jung talks a lot about the opposites and how when you lead with a dominant feeling function, how it's affected by the inferior thinking function. And so both ENFJ and INFP can look similar at times because of being a feeling dominant type. They're going to struggle with inferior thinking. And so the descriptions of it are very similar in certain parts too. And usually people associate people pleasing with extroverted feeling, and that creates a lot of confusion among INFPs because there are so many people pleasing INFPs. Really, people pleasing comes from needing to parent please. So if you had parents that you couldn't please, you're either too much or not enough, you're going to develop a people pleasing side of yourself no matter what type you are. And so people even call NF types chameleons because they're known for their people pleasing, all the NFs. That's the stereotype. And so there is an element of if you don't belong in where you're planted, you will blend. So there's a phenomenon called intuitive blending, but this could apply to anyone who doesn't feel like they fit in their environment. You will people please. You will try to change your colors to fit in because it's survival, and we'll do so many things for survival. So with Claire, he's not showing his extroverted intuition that much in today's video, but he does use a lot of NE. So in his metaphors, in his analogies, he'll equate death to this very interesting way that no one's ever put it. And I'm like, oh, very interesting. You have a very metaphorical mind, and it tends to bring you on tangents and certain thought trails that are very creative. And so I'm just letting people know. But Claire, do you have any thoughts around that or any examples for people to grasp a little?
Yeah, I guess I'm like kind of getting down to business to answer the questions because I'm just like I guess um and something that was pointed out to me when I was doing like from the in the results from objective personality system is how much information I'm managing at once. So it's like and I guess and that's what I like to do. I like to take in um just I want to say as much information as possible, but there's like a more specific way to put it. Where it's like I want to be juggling all of it. I want to have it all. I want to be completely overextending, trying to like manage all this info, just completely overwhelmed by like wisdom and information and like like what people think. I want to know like what all these people think, and I want to like be and then I find that like coming to a conclusion feels like death. This isn't the metaphor you're thinking of, but this is like for me it's like I don't want to. It's almost like I don't want to come to a conclusion. Like it's there's like a combination of like I don't want to do extroverted thinking. So I'm like if I'm ever gonna do it, it's just gonna be like I'm gonna do it, get it over with. But then at the same time, it feels like I guess yeah, and at the same time, it feels like when I do it, then I'm going to come to conclusions, and then it's like over. And it almost feels like all of that stuff, all of this information and wisdom, and like all these people and everything they think, it just like dies because I came to a conclusion. And then so I think that what this led to, and what I was telling Joyce in our sessions, which was like a very huge realization for me. Um, yeah, this it was very huge for my healing as I started realizing that I felt like a reaper. I started realizing that I felt as though if I like went into the world as like who I really am, then I would be like deathly because I would be coming to all these conclusions and then everything would end because I would just be like So it felt like if I went out into the world, or I'm like hiding it, it felt like I'm attracted to death. I'm attracted to, another way of putting it is like a crow. I also see it kind of like a crow is around death because it, I guess, sees opportunity there. I don't know. Um, but yeah, that's basically like how I see myself. Is it's like I want to open up, and then by opening up, I've now started a process and a reciprocation of other people opening up, and then for us to realize the things that we're operating with and believing about ourselves, the stories that we have, to realize that there's something wrong with them, and then there's death, because you realize that your narrative is there. You don't exactly want to keep all of it, is a nice way to put it.
Yeah, and I think it's really illustrative of introverted feeling dominant because you don't want to come to conclusions with who you are. Because if you come to a conclusion of the external world of what to do, you're cutting off exploration. You're cutting off also self inquiry too. And so that can seem like it's stifling your flow state to do your inferior function. And so there are also times that you'll talk about you don't like being told what to do. And so types that have higher up extroverted intuition or extroverted sensing don't like to be told what to do. Of course, anyone who's had a micromanaging person in their life will also dislike it too. But I find certain types have a special aversion to it. And it's because if it doesn't come from the FI heart, then why should I do it? I'm just doing it because you told me to do it. Now it feels inauthentic to do it. So even if I was planning to do it, now I don't want to do it because you told me to do it. And so introverted feeling wants things to come from a place where it feels true to themselves. Otherwise, it feels like you're going in an uphill battle. So I'm sure you can describe it better than I can, Claire. So I'll let you take the stage.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, I was just thinking recently that I have an aversion to the word work. I hate. I just like people use that word too much. I think like you don't have to use that word, in the ways that we tend to. That I found. Um, and I hate like and like the worst word is like homework. It's just like one of my favorite words is home. I love. I'm homely. I'm very homely. And then like you add work to it, and it's like what, like you go to you go s- to school or whatever, and they already have control over your whole day, and then you have to go home, and they still have control over what you do at home, and it's like, when do you, like, at what point is this? And this is the other thing I was thinking about introverted feeling. I think there's an efficiency to it, because it's not settling on something. It's trying to make sure that everything is deliberate. It's deliberating. And so if I think if it's given like proper attention um, and everything, then it's what you'll find is that things become more magical. Um, Things just work somehow. Like it's just like, oh wow, why does this all just feel right? Why does everything just feel right? And why is everything working so smoothly, as if like you don't have to work. You don't have to force it to work, because it's been it's been deliberated so much that, like, people like it, they when you do have to do what's considered to be work, your mind's it becomes more focused on the flow state, because you're not thinking like, oh, I have to do this thing that's really annoying or gross or difficult, or um, like making my mind do something against its like against the path of, like against an easy path that feels good. You don't have to think that, because you value it. You're valuing it, feels magical. And I think like I forget what you were saying.
Yeah, I was talking about how you don't like being told what to do. What I noticed about our interactions together, Claire, is you notice when other people are oversimplifying things, whether it's oversimplifying you or oversimplifying a concept, and you like to give it its fair shake. And I noticed this with FI and users because the extroverted intuition notices when people aren't looking at the variations in pattern and all the exceptions to the pattern, and the introverted feeling wants to be understood. So it'll try to make sure that people don't reduce you down to something. And you might need time to explore who you really are. So INFPs have a very rich world inside them. They tend to spend that time ruminating, thinking about if things really resonate or their thoughts on a topic and how it relates back to themselves. And so sometimes to other people that can look like they're being very still. And to an ESTJ looking at it can be like, are they doing anything? They're just in their head. Whereas the INFP is actually doing a lot. It's just in their head. And so INFPs are often misunderstood for their introverted feeling because it's a lot of time preparing to make a decision. And then when they do, they really refined it. And so it's really deliberate when they really head out to do it.
Yeah, I think it has to be like the way that you simplify things is really useful, because it's it's simplified, which is useful, and also um it's easy to interpret properly. The problem, I guess, that like haunts me, and I guess is like would make a lot of sense. It's like related to um my type, is like when I try to simplify, like for me, I see a world that's trying, like simplification isn't for simplification's sake. It's like simplifying because of bias or agenda, or and then when you do that, then you run into, of course, things aren't understood for what they are, and they're also misused, misunderstood, and so it's kind of like, because you know how this is I struggle with this, I think, because I'm introverted enough. It's like when I realize that when I go to say what I've been thinking, that and everyone is like taking from it all these things that I'm like, I have no idea how you took what I said and went there. I have no idea how that happened. Like, and I have no idea how to like word or like do it in a way, like make the right impression, like get the so that the minds of the people I'm talking with, like, understand where I'm going, where I'm coming from, where like it's really difficult. Um, so yeah, but it's the relating. I guess that's how I understand everything, is like I understand. I'm trying to understand myself, and then I relate everything else to that. And then because I'm doing that, then I also understand what it means to understand another subject. Um, because I understand what it would take, what it requires to understand myself. Um, then I know that like it's almost like I create like an algorithm where it's like input this person with this context into the algorithm, especially if I have contact with the person, and then it's like I can kind of like output like some understanding of identity, like or like how like what's going wrong, like how are they being misunderstood, how are they misunderstanding things, how like what is the problem at the core of this situation. That's kind of like the algorithm that I'm working on. um, but ultimately, from what you were saying about the, especially with INFPs, the metaphor that I thought for myself is like a tree. So when a tree starts growing, it doesn't start growing up; it grows into the roots, and then so like if you're looking at a tree grow, you're like, what is this tree doing? Is it even growing? And then but then by the time you give it enough time, then it's getting big and then it's producing.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful metaphor. I think a great metaphor for all IPs, whether they're TI dominance or FI dominance, is for INFPs, they're almost like a duck. So a duck, you see them just on the water and they look like they have a calm, chill face. But beneath it, their little feet are like pedaling really hard. So you don't see all the work the duck does. Oftentimes, you'll have INFPs or ISFPs saying they have a really chill face to other people, but inside they might be dealing with a lot of anxiety or there's a lot going on that people do not see. And so that brings us to how with Claire, he actually has very strong emotions inside. But for other people, they see stoicness too. And you've told me that you're very shocked that people don't actually see the emotions that you feel so strongly inside.
Yeah, and I'm always anxious that I'm being too intense and that I'm disturbing everyone. But that intensity is on the inside. Um, so yeah, and I've noticed that like I've had some relationships with people where I realized that I couldn't tell what they were feeling, and they didn't couldn't tell that I couldn't tell, and so they were operating like as if I did know. Um, and and I guess with that, I'm still having a hard time seeing it, but I'm trying to realize that like I'm that's happening with me as well. It's really hard to notice it though.
Introverted feeling can feel very intense. So there is that self consciousness. Will my emotions turn people off or off put people? So I know some certain INFPs can feel very self conscious about crying around others because they're afraid of getting judged, especially if they're male. And so oftentimes they can appear very stoic because they're afraid if the emotions bleed for some of them, that it might cause judgment. And for introverted feeling, emotions are very private. And so what's the point of sharing them at times too if they can be misconstrued by the outer world? It's like almost it keeps the emotional purity to not tell anyone because at least they can't project things onto it and throw things that aren't there and then like pollute the experience. At least if you keep it to yourself, it's pure within yourself.
Yeah, corruption and compromise are like really big words to me. I don't want to be corrupting or compromising for others. And I don't want to be corrupted or compromised. And it's like very sensitive. Um, but it feels like that's what's happening all the time.
Yeah, and that's why with INFPs, they won't try to force or manipulate you or influence you to feel certain things because that's very violating for them. And so they wouldn't want to do it to you because they don't want to corrupt or pollute or violate your emotional experience by imposing their will onto it. And they also don't want you to do the same to them too. So it's kind of like I can feel independently and you can feel independently. I hope that we can all have our rich emotional experiences in ourselves without being contaminated by what other people think we should be feeling or what we should be doing. All right. And so thank you so much for coming out today, Claire, and sharing your wisdom on your type journey. I'm sure it'll help fellow INFPs who were just as confused as you at the beginning of your journey. And so, yeah, it was really nice to get to know you during our sessions together. You always have a metaphor or a way of putting things that is very elegant. So you are actually extremely articulate and you provide metaphors that I haven't heard anyone say before. So you're unique in that sense.
Thanks.
And so thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you all in the next video. Take care. Bye.
Bye.